Hey hikers and outdoor lovers, what if your next adventure could help cure children's cancer? With the Cure Search Ultimate Hike, that's exactly what you'll do. Choose from 8 breathtaking trails and destinations across the country, like Mount Tamalpais in the Bay Area, the stunning Jackson Hole, or the scenic Shenandoah Valley. And that's just the start. Here's the challenge. Each Ultimate Hike pushes you to go the distance, up to 28 miles in a single day. It's tough, but it's totally doable, no matter your fitness level. Shorter distance options are available, and you'll get expert training every step of the way, both in person and virtually, so you'll be ready to tackle the trails like a pro. And as a special thank you for tuning in to the Hikes and Mikes podcast, you can register for the 2025 Ultimate Hike for free. Just use the promo code Hikes and Mikes when you sign up at theultimatehike.org, and your registration fee is waived. Ultimate Hike is the nation's largest endurance program dedicated to funding childhood cancer research. So if you're ready to lace up your boots, hit ultimatehike.org and let's hike together to make a life-saving impact. Don't forget, use code Hikes and Mikes, all one word, for free registration. Let's hit the trails and cure kids' cancer. Welcome everyone to the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I'm your host Ivan, and together we'll embark on a weekly journey connecting with extraordinary hikers from all corners of the United States and beyond. Throughout these fall months, we've had the privilege of conversing with some remarkable individuals. Their experiences and adventures will leave you yearning to hit the trails. In our Season 8 finale, we have an amazing guest who shares her incredible journey that led her to hike the Pacific Crest Trail in 2023. Her name is Chloe, but she's also known by her trail name, Chickpea, and you can follow her on Instagram at _itsme Chickpea. We talked to Chickpea about growing up on the eastern coast of Canada, living in Europe, and her inspirational journey that led her to complete the PCT in 2023. She shares some memorable experiences in the desert sections, trekking through the snow-covered Sierras, and ultimately making it all the way back home to Canada, reaching the Northern Terminus. If you ever dreamed of hiking the PCT or getting into thru-hiking, this episode is for you. Without further ado, let's jump into this episode with our guest, Chickpea. Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I have a really exciting guest with me today. Her name is Chickpea, and she's going to be sharing a little bit about her adventures over the last couple years. Chickpea, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. We always like to start off by asking our guests to share a little bit about themselves and how they got started hiking.
Hi, Ivan. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I am Chickpea. I'm originally from Halifax, Nova Scotia, but the last decade I have been traveling and living abroad. I most recently thru-hiked the Pacific Crest Trail in 2023 with zero backpacking experience. I'm really excited to dive into that and share with you all of the challenges and triumphs that I experienced during that 6-month thru-hike. As of now, I'm living out of a backpack, traveling the world, and working as a mindset coach.
And I'm really looking forward to kind of doing a deep dive on your new profession and then also kind of backpacking across the world. One thing that I'm interested in asking you, because being out of the Pacific Northwest, I kind of know like British Columbia and I've gone to Banff, but I haven't really explored the east coast of Canada. How would you describe the hiking scene on the east coast of Canada in Halifax?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And that's funny because I'm the opposite of you. You know, I grew up on the East Coast, but I never really experienced the West, the Pacific Northwest in California until I thru-hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. And so, yeah, growing up in Eastern Canada, I have to admit I don't have a lot of experience hiking. I only really got into hiking when I moved across the pond in Europe. I would say it's more recently that I've really discovered the beauty of Nova Scotia and what the hiking and outdoors have to offer. And so Eastern Canada is a beautiful, beautiful area. It's obviously on the Atlantic Ocean. And so what I love about Eastern Canada is just the coastal hiking aspect. You get to really fully immerse yourself of walking along these huge rugged cliffs and these huge rock formations of kind of hopping from boulder to boulder. It's been really special for me every time that I return home. I've lived in Europe for the last decade. Europe is amazing, but one thing it does not have is the ocean. And I never realized how much I missed the kind of expansiveness of the ocean and what that offers. And living in Europe and kind of having that landlocked feature, I missed the ocean so much. If I was returning home for holidays or vacation, it almost became a ritual for me in the last decade to really take time to get outside and go on a coastal hike. It just felt really special to reconnect with the ocean. I grew up on the ocean. Actually, my childhood home was right on the ocean. So I'd wake up every morning and be able to look out to these beautiful, expansive views. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. There's lots of uniqueness of Nova Scotia. One area north of Nova Scotia is called Cape Breton, and you have the Cabot Trail, which is, I think, a 300, 400 scenic drive that you can drive through, and just absolutely stunning. It's really the highlight of Nova Scotia. Highly recommend to go during fall, because that's when you're going to see all of these stunning colors of oranges, reds, and yellows. You may see a moose here and there if you're lucky.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question, Chickpea, is if people wanted to visit the east coast of Canada, would you recommend the fall season, or is summer a good time, or spring?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess each season definitely has its advantages. Fall is my favorite season because of Nova Scotia. I think it is just absolutely such a special time to be there with all of those vibrant and magnificent colors. So I would definitely recommend fall season. The caveat to that is it's also hurricane season, September and October. So you may find yourself in a very adventurous situation where a hurricane comes through, which I have experienced quite a few in my lifetime growing up in Nova Scotia.
You've mentioned that you spent time living in Europe, and now you've had quite a diverse background in hiking different trails and different terrains. Looking back at it, or looking back at it now, how would you describe the differences between the trails, say, here in the United States and Canada compared to what you experienced in Europe?
I think what's interesting about my experience in Europe in the last decade was, I moved to Luxembourg. And what's really unique and interesting about Luxembourg is it's a tiny, tiny country. If you look on the map, it's kind of nestled in between France, Germany, and Belgium. And you may not even realize there's a country in the middle of that. It's so small. And what makes that special is there's nature everywhere. The city center is really small, and you can drive 20 minutes out of the city center and have access to nature. And I think that's what really stood out for me in Luxembourg, especially, and also in France when I lived there. It's just the accessibility of trails. You can hop on a train or hop on a local bus, and it'll take you directly to the trailhead. And so it's really easy to get involved and access hiking trails, where I find in Canada and the US as well is that the accessibility sometimes is good and definitely improving, but you definitely do need access to a car, and it's more remote and kind of vast. Europe, it's again so small compared to Canada and the US. It's just mountains and valleys and rivers for days. But Europe is really unique, where it's less remote and it is intertwined with villages and castles, and you can be walking through vineyards. And so that changes the experience. You could be mid-hike and stumble across a cafe and stop for a croissant and coffee instead of, boiling your instant coffee in the mountains in the US or Canada. And so it's a really, really amazing experience in Europe. I would say that I was very late to the game of beginning hiking. When I moved to Luxembourg, I really didn't have a lot of hiking experience. I didn't grow up hiking in Eastern Canada. And so I had this deep desire to start hiking, and I didn't really know how. And I was, it felt very overwhelming, and it was so new. I didn't know how to start. I didn't even know how to find a trail. I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know, where to start on the trail. And so it felt very scary to me. And I had this desire, and I didn't know what to do with it. And fortunately, at the time, I was working for Amazon in Luxembourg, and there's lots of expats that come to Luxembourg for work. And so everyone has this shared desire to connect and meet new people. And I remember one email specifically coming through that was somebody, and it was a friend of mine. I was organizing a day hike in Luxembourg on the weekend, and it was perfect. This is exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to go on a hike. I didn't know how to organize it, and here was my friend organizing a day hike. And so I just absolutely jumped on the opportunity. Probably a group of 10 of us, and they were new Amazonians. I hadn't met them before, so it was also really beautiful to have those new connections and be outside in this really magical fairy tale nature in Luxembourg that I hadn't experienced before. I remember coming home at the end of the day and just being surprised of how easy that was. He did an amazing job of organizing. And we met at the train station. We hopped on a train for half an hour. We were at Trail. We walked a little bit and then hopped on a bus and came back to the city center. At the end of the day, I just felt so much more confident to be able to go and hike. I had finally experienced this thing that felt big and scary. Thanks to my friend who had organized that hike, it wasn't that hard. And it was actually really easy to find trails, and you can just start out really small. So that was a really special memory for me of how I got into hiking.
One thing that's coming across is you have a love for travel, and you're recording from across the Pacific in the beautiful country of Malaysia. Outside of hiking, I think travel has been a big part of your life. How did that love for travel kind of come about?
Yeah, it has. Traveling has been a huge part of my life, and I think I really do owe it to my parents. I'm very grateful to both my mom and dad. They were from England originally and actually moved over to Canada after they got married. So growing up, a lot of our vacations, we weren't going camping or hiking, but we were actually flying across the pond to Europe to visit our family that were still there in England. And so at a very young age, I was exposed to a lot of traveling and exposed to a lot of different cultures and food and even languages. And it just really felt like there was a whole world out there to explore. And I'll always remember this defining moment after graduating university. I had this very comfortable, cushy job offer at a bank, the Bank of Montreal in Canada, to be a financial advisor. And I had this job offer. That's a dream for all recent graduates, to have a job after you finish university. And I declined it. I rejected the offer. And instead, I decided to fly to France to be an au pair, which essentially is a live-in nanny. So I was taking care of 2 kids. I was speaking English with them to improve their English. And I was also learning French myself and immersing myself into the French culture. I managed to convince my parents to let me do this, to, reject this very good job and move to France under the condition that after 1 year, I would come back home to pursue my law degree to become a lawyer. And the running joke is that it's now been 10 years I've been living in Europe, and they're still waiting for me to come back to be a lawyer.
It's really great that they were supportive to give you that opportunity to travel for a year. That's something out of a movie, Chickpea. Like, I've seen, a movie where somebody becomes an au pair. Is that still possible nowadays, or do you think it's getting more difficult to have that kind of gap year as an au pair in Europe?
I think the gap year is becoming more and more popular. And I'm really excited, I guess, about kind of future generations coming through. And this is something that I experienced on the Pacific Crest Trail, is that I think the younger generation have a lot more autonomy and can really think for themselves. Whereas before, we had to follow this traditional path of going to university, getting the job, working up the corporate ladder. Especially after traveling for so long, I've met so many people who have decided to take a different path and decided that they don't want to go down that traditional path. And so they want to take a gap year, whether it's, becoming an au pair in Europe or maybe through hiking a long distance trail for 6 months. And so it's really inspiring. As soon as you get out of your comfort zone and what's familiar to you, the world just opens up, and you meet so many people that have the most amazing stories, the most, unique paths of how they've come to where they are today. And I think traveling has really helped me to become the person that I am today. And I'm so grateful for the chance to be able to move around, to meet new people, to experience new cultures. And so I think, if anyone is on this call right now thinking about what they want to do, need a break from a job, or don't know what their next steps is, go travel. It'll be the best investment in your life.
One thing, Chickpea, we've been asking folks that have come on the podcast this season how their summer hiking season was. But for you, since we're almost at the tail end of 2024, have you had any memorable travel or hiking experience, either in the summer or this fall, that you can share with us?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's been an amazing summer and fall season for myself. I spent my summer in Montana. The first time I've been into Montana. It was a really, really fun. My boyfriend's from Helena, Montana. And so we were spending time with friends and family, and we had some free time. I knew that I wanted to get outside and hike, probably another long distance hike. I think the Pacific Crest Trail has really given me a very deep desire to continue long distance hiking versus backpacking trips. So we were looking around to see what options we had close to Montana, and the Colorado Trail came up as an option. So we decided in early August to thru-hike the Colorado Trail Trail. It's a 486-mile trail that you can start either southbound or northbound. We began in Denver and hiked south to Durango. The Colorado Trail is known mile for mile to be the most beautiful trail in the US, and I cannot agree more. That beauty does come with a price, however, because it was the hardest hike of my entire life of 32 years. The elevation in the Colorado Trail and the thunderstorms are two elements that were things that I did not experience on the Pacific Crest Trail or any previous hiking experience. So it was very much a steep learning curve, but an amazing experience. The Colorado Trail, highly recommended as well.
And I always ask people who have done the Colorado Trail, because I feel like everyone that's done it has a story that involves mountain bikers, because it's a multi-use trail. Did you come across or have any experiences with mountain bikers on that trail?
I also heard this about the Colorado Trail and mountain bikers, and most of what I heard before having my own experience was how annoying it was to have mountain bikers, speed by you and you're having to get out of your own hiking rhythm to get off the trail for them. I loved it. I thought it was such a different experience to be able to see how everyone is using the trail, not only hikers, but bikers as well. And I was just so fascinated about how fast they would go, watching them push their mountain bike with their backpacking gear up a mountain pass that is rocky and steep. I don't know. It was just the most astounding. I just had so much respect and admiration for them. I thought I was doing something hard, but these guys, and I spoke to many of them, the mountain biking, the Colorado Trail is extremely intense. So I loved it. We actually got to experience also very early on, close to Denver, forgetting the name exactly. Oh, I think it was maybe Breckenridge. Breckenridge is a really popular ski resort and lots of trails around Breckenridge. We got to experience a race, I guess, a mountain biking race. And so one morning we wake up at the campsite. It's probably 7 a.m. I don't know, probably not hundreds, but just a constant stream of mountain bikers coming by the campsite. It was so much fun to see. And so I think, the mountain biking in Colorado, it just really brought the trail alive. And I really enjoyed that experience.
Now, I got to ask, because we had one of those community moments when we did a test run earlier this week that you knew a previous guest who was on the podcast. And one of our guests this season, earlier in the season, shared a very similar experience in Breckenridge on that race. So now I got to ask, did you ever come across Steven, aka Near Miss?
Doesn't sound familiar, unfortunately. You know what? I think, that was so cool that we had that connection of a thru hiker on the PCT. I think we started, so I hiked it with my boyfriend Artifact. We were a little bit outside of the bubble of the Colorado Trail, so we didn't actually have a lot of social connections. We weren't meeting a ton of thru hikers, so I wonder if Steven had already gone through Breckenridge by the time we were coming. There's lots of mountain bike races, I think, happening in that area. Would have been cool.
Now, you talked about doing the PCT, and before we kind of do a deep dive into your experience, I wanted to learn, because you mentioned you really didn't have any thru hiking or backpacking experience before you started the PCT. How did you end up getting into backpacking and ultimately thru hiking?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I hope you have the rest of the weekend because it's a pretty long story, and I'm excited to dive into it. I've mentioned I didn't grow up hiking and was very late in my mid-20s exposed to hiking. I didn't have any backpacking experience before I decided to thru hike the PCT. I kind of went from hiking to thru hiking, and it never really crossed my mind that backpacking was something that I probably should have tried before thru hiking for 6 months. And I remember announcing to the world that I was going to be thru hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, especially to my close family and friends. And they all just kind of looked at me being like, are you mad? I mean, you don't really have the camping, hiking vibe. Like, you don't have experience. Are you sure about this? And that whole journey of deciding to thru hike and throughout the preparations, I never had a doubt. I never questioned my decision of this adventure. I think I was at a point in my life that I had followed expectations of other people. I followed what I thought was the right path. I got good grades. I went to a good university. I got a good job working at a Fortune 500, got the promotions, worked up the corporate ladder. I did everything that I was supposed to do that was supposed to lead me to feeling successful and happy. And yet here I was still feeling unfulfilled and just having this deep desire for something more and bigger. unfortunately, it's a little bit personal, but I'm happy to share it because I think it can definitely resonate with individuals, is that I lost my dad about 8 years ago. I was 25 years old. Absolute shock to lose somebody so close to you. You know, losing a parent is something that I don't wish on anybody. And it was the hardest lesson that I had to learn of how precious life is. And so it really made me question what I want to do with my life. And if for some reason something were to happen for me, was I going to have any regrets? And so I'm really grateful to my dad. He was my biggest role model. He lived life larger than life. And he was, unapologetically fierce. He did exactly what he wanted to do. He was so stubborn. And I'm very happy and proud that I have those same qualities. And so with that huge loss and kind of the situation I was in my corporate professional life, I knew I had to do something. I knew that I had to have this larger than life adventure. And the PCT just kind of presented itself to me, and I knew I had to do it. There was no question or doubt in my mind. Me, zero backpacking experience, did not grow up in the outdoors, was about to hike from Mexico to Canada.
That is just incredible. And, we'll probably touch base on this, Chickpea, but I imagine there was tough days throughout the journey, some easier than others and some harder than others. Did you get a sense that your dad was kind of with you on that trail, helping you through some of those tough times?
Yeah. My dad was there every step of the way. I was doing this hike very much to honor him. I think my family found that quite ironic because my dad was the least outdoorsy person in the world. So for me to honor him in this way was quite ironic, but he was always there with me. And I think that's what I love about hiking as well, is that I get to share that with him. I'm exhausted walking up a steep mountain. I'm huffing and puffing, and I get to the top and I just look around and I just feel so much gratitude. I feel so much I feel such a sense of aliveness that just makes me feel so grateful for what I've had in my life, for what I'm doing with my life. And my dad ultimately was somebody that helped me get to where I am today. And so he's always with me. He's my number one inspiration, number one role model.
He would definitely be proud, Chickpea, because we'll touch base on it. But you did something that, at least from my experience talking to others from the class of 2023, you pushed through the massive amount of snow that were up in the Sierras. But before we kind of jump into that, I'm always interested, especially in those moments that are going to be life-changing. I feel like the 24 hours leading up to those moments, taking that first step, are very ingrained in people's memories. Can you take us through those 24 hours leading up to getting dropped off on the Southern Terminus? And I imagine there was a wave of emotions, but how was the first day on the trail? If you could share, how was it for those first 24 hours?
Yeah, I mean, even just when you ask that question, I feel like I'm back in that moment. I'm getting really emotional. I'm getting teary-eyed. It's something that we don't forget. It's very much a visceral experience. Like my body is just, got the butterflies and everything. So yeah, I'd love to share a little bit of the few days leading up to reaching the Southern Terminus, and then I'll finish off with how I felt after the first day. But wow, was it an emotional roller coaster. I knew what I was getting myself into in a sense with the preparation, getting all the gear, getting physically ready. But you don't realize until you're on that flight traveling to the US when you realize it's actually happening. I was very comfortable at home watching YouTube videos and doing all the research. It just felt like this far off dream. But when I got on that flight leaving France to, fly 14 hours to Los Angeles, it hit me like a wall. I was an emotional wreck. I could not stop crying. I was leaving something so safe, comfortable, to go into the biggest unknown of my life. I knew nothing. I really didn't know what I was doing. I had this big backpack on. It was all brand new, unused gear. I felt almost kind of like an idiot because I'm carrying this backpack. I'm sure everyone knows that I'm this absolute fraud. And so I just had this emotional roller coaster. But again, I never had a doubt. I knew this is exactly what I needed to do. And those few days leading up to reaching the Southern Terminus, I had so many little signs kind of sprinkled across those days that just confirmed that I was on the right path. And I remember one very, very special day. It was the morning I was leaving my Airbnb to reach the Southern Terminus. So I was leaving the final comfortable accommodation that I would have for the foreseen future. And it was the first time that I had actually properly, I guess, weighed my pack. At home, I had, put my pack on with all the gear, water, a little bit of food. But that morning, I finally packed everything up. I maybe had, 4 days of resupply and 2 liters of water. And I put this pack on. It was the heaviest thing I'd ever experienced. I didn't realize how heavy, I guess, water and food was going to be ultimately. And I felt so silly. I couldn't believe it. And so I order my Uber. It's going to take me to the train station. And I'm walking outside. I have this heavy pack on. And, again, I'm having all of these thoughts of self-doubt and imposter syndrome. I feel like a fraud. What am I doing? And this stranger just stops me on the sidewalk and looks at me. And she says, "Are you going on a thru hike?" And I looked at her and I was like, thru hike? That's such a specific key word. Not many people know thru hiking. And I looked at her and I said, "I am. I'm about to start on the Pacific Crest Trail." And she responds saying, "I did the PCT last year." And I just couldn't, I probably started crying immediately. I was like, I'm terrified. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, my pack is so heavy. And she gave me the exact encouragement and validation I needed in that moment. And she just said, "You're going to be absolutely fine. I had the best time of my life. Don't worry about your pack. Don't worry. You will figure things out and people will help you as well on trail. Have fun." And I got into that cab, still crying, of course, but just with that validation and confirmation that I was on the right path.
That literally gave me goosebumps. The hiking community, whether you're a day hiker, backpacker, thru hiker, I think is extremely supportive. It's one of the few communities I find that, regardless of your background, people are there to give a helping hand. And that's incredible that, at that moment, you bumped into somebody who completed it the year prior and was able to give you the right words to lead you to the Southern Terminus. When we talked to Fry Pocket after he completed PCT, he mentioned coming across the first snowfields on Mount San Jacinto. And that's what kind of helped him develop relationships with his trail family navigating through that snowfield. Did you end up encountering snow on Mount San Jacinto, or did you encounter it further north?
Yeah, I started on March 31st, so very early on. I think the average popular start date for the PCT is probably more mid-April to mid-May, so I was very much in the early group of starters. I remember looking on Facebook maybe 2 days before I was starting, and a snowstorm had hit in Mount Laguna, which is 40 miles into the PCT, and there were photos of the snow covering the windows and doors. Snow was a huge topic for the class of 2023. California was hit with record high snowfall. I think numbers were saying it was 400% over the average. So we were very aware that we were going into a season with a high snow. And every PCT hiker is going to tell you that their year is different and it was harder. For some reason, mine is definitely going to be the snow made it a challenging year. So there was a lot of talk before starting the PCT, and there was a lot of talk on the PCT around what are you going to do about the snow? I think I was very lucky again because I didn't have that experience. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. So I was just taking it day by day. And so when I reached San Jacinto, I was 100% snow covered. There were a few groups of hikers that had already gone through San Jacinto. So we had some intel and knowledge. At that time, I was with a trail family of about 8 people. I had the best time with them. They were absolutely amazing. We decided to take a zero in Idlewild. That's a lovely little mountain town just before you start making your ascent up to San Jacinto. So we took some time, we delegated together. We went to local outfitter stores and talked with them as well to understand what the conditions were like. And you mentioned the PCT community. I think that's really the moment that solidified how amazing the PCT community is. You could ask anybody on the street that was a PCT hiker and they would share everything with you. They really want to help you. And not only the PCT hikers, but the local communities. I mean, we were going into stores, herds of us. I mean, there were all these trail families of, 8 to 10 people taking up the entire store, which, they're not very big, these kind of local outfitter stores in the mountain towns. friends, and we would spend hours there asking them questions, and they'd be taking out their maps and showing us the trails and the alternates, and completely free of charge, desire to help the PCT community. So I just felt so grateful for the PCT community. Now, San Jacinto specifically, I think I bought my ice axe in Idlewild. I'd never used an ice axe, but when you're going through snow conditions, especially that are, in more mountainous terrain, that it's steep and there are kind of no fall zones, which essentially are chutes that you don't want to fall down because it can lead to severe injury or worse. So you need to have snow gear. So ice axe is very important to have. An ice axe you use for situations to self-arrest. So in the case that unfortunately maybe you have lost your footing and you're slipping, the ice axe is going to be your last line, your last safety line to help you stop and self-arrest. So I got this thing. I didn't really know how to use it. It looked it looks like an axe. It's kind of scary to have that in your pack. It's like a weapon. And then you also have crampons or micro spikes. So, hikers can decide if they want to have micro spikes, which are a little bit lighter than crampons. I went with crampons. They have more traction. They are heavier, but it just made me feel a lot more comfortable and safe. I went out with my trail family on San Jacinto. We hit snow probably on day 2. So, we slowly acclimated to reaching the snowfields. It seemed okay. It seemed pretty easy until I reached the slope. The slope, I don't know how to else describe it. I remember just turning a corner and looking at this thing, and it just kind of stopped me in my footsteps. It looked terrifying. It was extremely steep. I didn't even, follow the chute down because I didn't want to see how far down it went. There was lots of blowdown. If you're familiar with that area around San Jacinto, it's really known for the blowdowns as well. So you're constantly, it's like an outdoor playground, climbing over trees. And there was this massive tree that was right across the snowfield that we had to cross. Not only was I needing to cross a very steep snowfield with a very intense chute, there was a tree that I had to climb over. At that time, I was hiking alone. I had my trail family. They were probably a few miles ahead of me. A few of them were behind me, but I knew I wasn't going to cross this alone. That was number one, not happening. So I waited for hikers to catch up. One group of hikers did catch up, and I was too scared to go. So I just stood there and I watched them cross it, which was really helpful. It gave me good information and also confidence that it was manageable. It was actually a French couple that finally came around the corner. And I was really happy because I hadn't been speaking French on the PCT. And so I was really excited to meet a French couple and speak French and kind of have that home connection. And I told them that I was just absolutely terrified and I don't know if I'm going to cross this snowfield or not, or if I'm just going to, sleep here. He said, nope, you're coming with us. You're going to do it. Like, we're doing it together. And they kind of just forced me to cross the snowfield. And I did it. It was fine. And it was amazing. I did not make it up San Jacinto. I decided that night, I think we hiked 8 miles across probably a 12-hour day. I was so proud of myself. I felt absolutely invincible, but I knew that I had used all of my reserves. I was physically, emotionally, mentally exhausted, and I just didn't want to push myself. It was really early. I knew that there was still a lot of snow to tackle coming up in the Sierra that we'll talk about. So yeah, I took an alternate route, Devil's Slide, just at the Saddle Junction, and I went back down to Idlewild. And I think that's what was really nice about San Jacinto, was that you could go up, and if you didn't feel comfortable, you could take an alternate route down. There were so many side trails that could safely-ish. They were still a little bit sketchy with all the snow, but they could take you down and you could be back to safety in Idlewild. But yeah, great experience. I felt really proud of myself. I didn't know what I was doing with all the snow. It also gave me a good reality check that snow is dangerous and it is something that you need to be careful with. And so yeah, it was a good test run.
And I'm glad to know that there's alternative routes, because I know sometimes it's due to wildfires or landslides, but it's good to know that if the trail is impassable, that there are alternative routes that you can take. One big milestone, I think, for a lot of people that do the PCT is arriving at Kennedy Meadows after wrapping up the desert section. How was the desert section for you, and how was it reaching the Sierras?
The desert section was really, I can't compare because it's my first time hiking the PCT, but because it was such a wet year in the desert, I didn't necessarily have the same challenges that, previous hikers would have had in terms of, the dryness of the desert and water scarcity and long water carries. I was really lucky. I only carried, I think, especially at the beginning, a 1 liter water capacity. There's streams everywhere. And we kind of called them bonus streams because I used the navigation app map far out, and they have waypoints on the maps that'll tell you where the water sources were. But even between those waypoints, there were just streams everywhere. It was flowing. I did start early, so that's definitely the advantage to starting early, is that you do still have a lot of snow melt. So the desert section was just, for me, it was fun. We'll talk a little bit about kind of the mental tolls and the resilience that you need to have for a thru hike. And I think what's really great about the desert section is that for everybody, it's just new and exciting. We call it kind of the honeymoon phase, that no matter what challenges are thrown your way, there's just so much newness and so much excitement, and you have so much kind of reserves to give that you're just having the time of your life. I mean, the memories for me of the desert section is that I remember thinking I hadn't laughed this much in probably my entire life. I felt so happy. I had met the best trail family. We were having the time of our life. We were not worried about crushing miles. We would take breaks all the time, 0 days. I took a 0 day at Lake Marina. For anyone that knows the PCT, Lake Marina is 20 miles into the PCT. Most people make it day one. It took me 3 days to get to Lake Marina, and I took a 0. I was, it was my vacation, right? Like, this is my time. I took off from work to be out here. I knew I was going to have to get more serious eventually and start to go faster, but the desert section was just an absolute joy. The challenging part of the snow is that everybody has a different approach and a different method of how they want to approach the snow. And so what was challenging for this year, I think, is that trail families didn't stick together. I lost my trail family actually after San Jacinto because, I took a side trail. Another friend even bailed out earlier. Other friends decided to go up San Jacinto. So we were all on different timelines and we lost each other. And it was really hard to catch up. We were only a day apart, but we never really were able to line up and hike together again. So I found myself constantly jumping from trail family to trail family, or sometimes even solo hiking. I did make the decision to go off trail to see friends. I took 10 days off for vacation. And so when I got back on trail, I didn't know anybody. So to fast forward to Kennedy Meadows, it took me about over 2 months to reach Kennedy Meadows. I think it was June 11th, probably a little longer than average. Kennedy Meadows is really special, as you say. It's very much the first big milestone that you can really kind of tangibly check off your list. Like, yes, I finished the desert section. That's done. Let's move into the Sierra. And Kennedy Meadows is that, physical place where we say goodbye to the desert and we enter the Sierra. Now, Kennedy Meadows is tiny. I think there's a population of 200 people. There's nothing there. There's just one road. You get off the PCT trail and you follow the road into Kennedy Meadows, the town, which essentially is a general store. And that's where all the hikers hang out. This general store, there's places to camp. There's this big outdoor patio where you can hang out and organize resupply or, have some beers and have fun. And when you're sitting outside on that patio at the general store, you can see all of the hikers that arrive. And so it's a beautiful ritual at Kennedy Meadows is that as you see the hikers come in and you're outside, you give them a round of applause. You cheer, you yell, you clap, you give them everything because they've just gone through the desert. It's a huge achievement. And so I was fortunate enough to receive that round of applause and cheering from the hikers. And I felt like a superstar. It was amazing.
One thing that I wanted to ask you, because I know Fry Pocket, I think he tried navigating the Sierras and ultimately decided to jump up to Oregon and then come back down and complete it once the snow melted. And I know a lot of PCT hikers from 2023 ended up flipping and going Nobo, but you really thought it out and ultimately decided to continue traversing the Sierras. What kind of helped you make that decision, and how was that experience?
Yeah. So as you've mentioned with Fry Pocket, that's not a unique case. That year, there were so many hikers deciding to flip-flop is the official terminology that we use. And the idea is that you flip to a different section. So if you decide not to hike the Sierra, for example, you're going to flip north, continue walking northbound up to Canada, and then you'll flop back down and complete the Sierra at the end of the season. So, September, August, when the snow has melted. I would say the majority of the class of 2023 took that strategy. I don't have official stats, but from what I saw and experienced, I'd say anywhere between 70 to 80% of hikers flipped north and skipped the Sierra. And again, there was lots of talk. The desert section, what are you going to do about the snow? What are you going to do about the Sierra? Everyone was asking this, not only the PCT hikers, but everyone in the local towns. Everyone wanted to know what you were going to do and what your decision was. And I really felt like I had to follow the majority of hikers to flip north. I mean, of course I'm going to do that. I have zero experience. I didn't make it up San Jacinto. How am I going to make it through, 400 miles of snow? So that whole time in the desert section, I was flipping north. That was my decision. Until I met another hiker, Artifact. That's another story for another day or for today, who knows? But we fell madly in love on the PCT in the mountains. We started hiking officially around Tehachapi. And I think Tehachapi, I'm horrible with mile numbers, but I'm going to ballpark probably 100 miles before Kennedy Meadows. And so I'm chatting with Artifact and I was like, yeah, so you're going to flip north. You're going to skip the Sierra. And he said, no, I'm not. I'm going to go into the Sierra. I kind of looked at him. I was like, but you're mad. Like, you're going to go into the Sierra? And, I learned that he had a lot more experience than I did. He grew up in Montana. There's snow all winter long, and he grew up backpacking with his family, and he had a lot of snow experience. And so his decision, his approach was that I'm going to go in and I'm going to go until I don't feel comfortable, and I'll turn back if I don't feel comfortable, or I'll go the whole way. And so he was very much taking it day by day. I was just so impressed that he wasn't being influenced by kind of what everyone else was doing. And he gave me, I guess, another perspective that, oh, that's actually smart. I can also go in and just see how I do. And if I feel that I'm not safe or it's too hard, I can turn back. So I decided to go in with Artifact. And I think Kennedy Meadows made it so special as well, because it almost felt like an exclusive tribe at Kennedy Meadows, because we were like, I don't know, the chosen ones, or like the ones left that had decided to not flip north and go into the Sierra. So that bond felt like even tighter and closer, because we were the ones that were going to tackle the Sierra. And so it was really exciting. We had a few days in Kennedy Meadows and everyone was, in their own respective groups, planning out, counting resupply days, mapping things out. Yeah, it felt really exciting. So Artifact and I tackled the Sierra. We made it 90 miles into the Sierra, and we did end up stopping at Kearsarge Pass and flipping north. So we made the decision to stop hiking in the Sierra simply because it was taking us too long. We went from probably 25-mile days in the desert section to not even being able to complete 10-mile days in the Sierra. Snow hiking is grueling. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. The time period that we were going through the Sierra was mid-June, and it's still completely snow-covered, but it's also very, very hot. And so during the day, there was really warm temperatures, a lot of snow melt happening, to the point that the snow was getting slushy, and it was really hard to get traction and to make distance throughout the day. So that meant that you wanted to hike on hard snow. That unfortunately meant that you had to wake up very early in the dark to walk on snow that you could actually make traction with your crampons. And so we were waking up at, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning to hike as far as we could until the conditions just weren't, safe or really productive enough to go any farther. So Sierra really took everything in me. I think, we were out there for 90 miles and it was probably a 10-day stretch. We did resupply in between the 10 days, but, I have lots of stories. I think I describe Sierra as majestic, but very relentless.
And Chickpea, where'd you guys end up flipping to? Did you go from the Northern Terminus back down, or did you flip to Oregon and continue going northbound?
Yeah, we flipped to Northern California. We flipped up to Lake Tahoe. So we started again in the Desolation Wilderness. Now, I very much had my rose-tinted glasses on of what Northern California would look like. I imagined that it was going to be snow-free, and that flipping from the Sierra to Desolation Wilderness and continuing north, I was going to be on dry trail. That was not the case. Northern California was still absolutely covered in snow. I very much suffered from the NorCal blues. That's a popular terminology that we use on the PCT, the NorCal blues. So Northern California blues. And there's many reasons why this comes up. California is a huge state. It took me 4 months to cross California. And so once you complete the desert section, once you get out of the Sierra, you feel like you should be really making distance. But here you are still hiking in California. You still haven't crossed a state and it's been months. And so that really, I think, wears on hikers, that they're not able to see tangible results of their efforts across the last few months. That definitely played a a role for me. But I think it was really the snow that I could no longer handle. I was exhausted. You get maybe 5 minutes of dry trail, and then you turn the corner, and there was this crazy sketchy snowfield that you'd have to cross. And so here I was having to take my pack off, get my ice axe, put my crampons on, focus, have my trekking poles, cross this snowfield to then stop again, put all of your gear away. And it was always like you couldn't get into the rhythm that you had in the desert section. Desert section was easy. You just walked and walked and walked, and you could really get into a rhythm, a momentum. And in the Sierra and Northern California, it was just a constant stopping and going and route finding and getting lost and trying to figure out where the trail is. And so it was really high energy hiking. It took everything in me. And Northern California was very much the space where I had days that I wanted to quit. I never considered that before at all in the desert, even in the Sierra, but Northern California, I had enough and I wanted to quit. I wanted to get off trail. I didn't. I pushed through because I think I'm stubborn and I don't like to give up on things. But yeah, it was a tough time.
And Chickpea, I'm a little biased being from the Pacific Northwest. I got to ask you, did the Pacific Northwest cure the North Cal blues? What was your experience hiking through not just Oregon, but Washington and ultimately reaching the Northern Terminus?
Oh, you're going to get me emotional again here, Ivan. Oh man. Yeah. The Pacific Northwest. Artifact was also very biased. He was from Seattle, and so he was telling me everything about how beautiful Washington was going to be, and I was really excited to experience it for the first time. And it definitely did cure my NorCal blues. Going into Oregon, there's just so many beautiful sections. People ask you, what's your favorite section? It's impossible. Oregon and Washington, every day you're going through a new landscape that is just absolutely stunning and beautiful. I think what makes Washington so special is that it is the last state, and I think it really hits you that you're going to be finished hiking in a few weeks. So you also change pace. You slow down, you start to smell the roses. I was taking longer breaks. I was reducing my miles. I was doing 30-mile days in Oregon, and in Washington, I decided I was going to do 20-mile days. But, also Washington decided for me because it's very steep climbing, so didn't have much of a choice for that. I wanted to slow down. I wanted to enjoy those last few weeks, and Washington was just stunning. I mean, the Cascade Mountains, I think my favorite section in Washington is Goat Rocks. It's just, it's a different planet. It's a different world. It really is. You have Knife's Edge in Goat Rocks. You have the Old Snowy. That's a little bit of a side trail, but you hike up Old Snowy and you have Mount Adams in one corner and Mount Rainier in the other corner. And it's absolutely stunning. I do have to say Washington tested me with the weather. We didn't get a lot of rain on the Pacific Crest Trail. It's, very dry, but Washington is not. There were some very, very wet stretches. I was cold. I was uncomfortable. I was miserable. But what made it all more joyful when you did have a sunny day and you were able to finally see the views and the landscapes that you were walking through when the clouds would part and give you that little glimpse of the beauty.
You didn't encounter any forest fires in Washington.
So because I was so slow and was maybe going a little bit slower than the average, I missed the biggest wildfire. I had all of my friends that had flipped north. They were all experiencing the wildfires. I think that year there were two big ones that were impacting the PCT specifically, the Dome Peak Fire and Blue Fire. And that resulted in a 100-mile detour. So an extra 5 days of hiking. And at this point in Washington, people are on a timeline. They got to get home. They got to get back to work. Their visas are expiring, or they were doing the continuous footpath. Lots of decisions to make if you were going to skip that section or do that 100-mile detour. But really, really lucked out that once we kind of got in that area, it opened up again. We had a really, really tiny detour around Stehekin that we had to go through a delightful town called Holden. But yeah, wildfires, I'm extremely grateful that we didn't impact my experience. I know that the PCT class of 2022, for example, wildfires in Washington actually prevented people from finishing. The terminus itself was closed. And so people had been hiking for 6 months and didn't get that closure. So I was really lucky that I was able to reach the Northern Terminus. And, I can go into my emotional roller coaster of reaching there, but yeah.
Yeah, because your pictures from the Northern Terminus, speaks volumes, but I know that only captured what you were feeling, hiking literally from Mexico to your home country of Canada. Can you take us through that day?
Yeah, it did feel like I was walking home. I've been living abroad almost my whole life. I left Canada at age 21. I've been living in Luxembourg and France for most of my 20s. And so it really felt like I had this special connection of walking back home after being away from it for so long. I was going through a lot on trail. I had never backpacked before. I had a lot of people that were doubting my capabilities of even being able to make it this far, including myself at times. I was doing this to honor my dad. And so that last day, I would stop and reflect and look out to the mountains and just be in tears of joy and gratitude for how far I've come, but also really thanking my dad for all the decisions that he made in his life and for giving me all the opportunities to be able to travel and to take this leap of faith to do something so big and to be so inspired by the way that he showed up in his life of living larger than life and just doing everything that his heart desired, even though people didn't believe in him every time. And I also felt while I was taking those final steps that I was saying goodbye to a past me and inviting a new Chickpea, a new person into this new chapter of my life. And so it was really emotional just reflecting back on the life I had been living. And, I had made the decision at that time to not return to my corporate job. I made the decision to not return to France. I had a 10-year relationship in France that I had left behind. So I was also saying goodbye to my past relationship. I really felt like I'd grown into a new person. I had this confidence and sense of accomplishment that you can't describe unless you do something like that. And it was so magical that last day. I woke up to snow and I looked around and the Cascade Mountains were just sprinkled with snow. And it just really felt like an absolute fairy tale to finish on that day.
That sounds, I've never experienced something like that in the sense of spending that much time away from friends, family, and doing something as difficult but as rewarding as through hiking. And, I think you've already mentioned there's people along the way that helped you out and helped you navigate those tough days on the trail. And, for thru hikers, I think a lot of them have memorable trail magic moments from individuals either on the trail or off the trail that help them out on their journey. Are there any specific trail magic moments that kind of stick out for you throughout the PCT?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Trail magic is so special. It really did kind of restore faith in humanity for me to experience and see strangers in the local community helping you out and being so generous and kind. It was such a special feeling to be able to experience that throughout the PCT, in California, Oregon, and Washington. There was trail magic sprinkled everywhere. Not only, trail magic can kind of come in so many different forms, whether it's picking you up from the trailhead and driving you into town. Trail magic can look like hosting you in town so you can sleep in a comfortable bed and take a warm shower. Or trail magic can look like actual trail magic on trail where, you as we call them trail angels who are giving the trail magic are volunteering your time, your energy, your finances to drive to a trailhead or somewhere accessible, provide food and cold drinks for hikers that you've never met before. It's so special. It really is. And so I think the most memorable trail magic that I received was in California. The desert section definitely has the most trail magic. It makes it even more exciting because it's all new and you're experiencing this for the first time. I was in a trail family, probably maybe 6 trail family. There was 3 girls and 3 guys. Myself and Baby Spice were slowing down a little bit. We were struggling to keep pace with the group. And that particular day involved a lot of road walking. We were really tired, probably did a bigger mile day than we were used to. We were behind the group and we were just grumpy and tired and we didn't want to go on any farther. So we decided that we were going to camp just the 2 of us. We weren't going to catch up to the remainder of the trail family. And we found this kind of like makeshift campsite. Really, wasn't very flat. It was really crowded. And we just said, okay, doesn't matter. Let's just pitch our tent. Let's have dinner and get some sleep. I'm just over with this day. Pitched our tents. We were setting up dinner and we get a message on our Garmin InReach. It's a satellite device that allows you to communicate when you don't have cell phone service. And so we received a text message from one of our trail family members saying, trail magic. It's just, 3 miles from where you are. Come. There's trail magic. There's pizza. There's beer. Come. And Baby Spice and I look at each other and we're like, but we've already set up camp. Like, we're about to have dinner. It's too late. We said that. And then we looked at each other and we're like, no, we need trail magic. We need this. So we packed up our tents and we ran down the mountain. Honestly, we were like giddy. We were so excited. It's exactly what we needed. And we show up and our friends are having a great time. It's this lovely couple in their Sprinter van that had parked in this parking lot next to a fire station. They had this amazing stand and, canopy, and there's pizza, there's chips and beer, and they're just hanging out. It was so much fun. to the point that we decided to camp in the parking lot. We cowboy camped, we slept in a parking lot. I kind of remember waking up the next morning and being like, how am I going to tell my mom that I just slept in a parking lot? Like, I don't think she's going to understand. And so we slept there and we, continued the trail magic, and he made us breakfast. I think he made us pancakes and there was coffee, and we just hung out there for the morning and the night before. And wow, was that the biggest morale booster I had ever experienced. It was so much fun.
And Chickpea, the listeners would not let it down if I didn't ask you the origin story of your trail name. Can you share how you got your trail name?
Trail names are very special in the thru hiking community. I will say this, for anyone going on a thru hike, you don't have to accept your trail name, because there are going to be hikers that are going to really want to give you a trail name, and you may not be happy with it, and that's okay. You are fully allowed to choose your own trail name or accept a specific trail name. I went through 3 different trail names until I came to the decision of Chickpea. I have also been known as Shortcut because I was sometimes prone to cut switchbacks, which I do not recommend. I was also known as Beetlejuice for the majority of the PCT because I got a beetle stuck in my hair, and when I tried to get it out, it sprayed Beetlejuice all over my hands, and so that was a pretty easy one to give me, and I accepted. And Chickpea is something that I decided to give myself on a more recent hike in Nepal on the Manaslu trek. My real name is Chloe, and my dad was actually from India, so I grew up with an Indian family, and they would often mistake my name Chloe for chole, which is chickpea curry. And so I grew up being known as Chickpea curry. Fast forward to Nepal and in the Manaslu trek, I was also being mistaken for chickpea curry. And so I decided, you know what? I think it's time to proclaim my name as Chickpea.
I love that. Now, Chickpea, you've mentioned it. You ultimately decided not to go back into the corporate work field. A lot of the thru hikers mention it's a hard transition to get back into the real world. And ultimately, you decided to inspire others to get outside, to embrace adventure, and build the confidence to achieve their goals, one bold step at a time. And you ultimately decided that you wanted to do a new role as an adventure and mindset coach. How did that come about? And how can folks learn more and schedule possibly a consultation with you?
Yeah, thanks for asking and letting me chat about that. I knew after thru hiking the PCT that I needed to try something new, kind of wanted to continue the theme of doing something different. And so I knew that returning to the corporate world wasn't the right fit for me anymore at that time. Successfully completing the thru hike, I really do give credit to my background as a yoga teacher and mindfulness coach. I've done a lot of personal development and kind of personal growth in the last decade, and mindfulness really was something that helped me better manage my emotions, help build a strong resilience. And I had these tools and techniques to use on the PCT when I was facing those challenges. In my experience, mental preparation isn't always at the forefront of when you're preparing for a thru hike. And that's not anyone's fault. It's just not as easily accessible. And it's also not really a tangible thing that you can kind of tick off your checklist of, okay, I'm mentally prepared. That's done. Just like I've purchased my sleeping bag or my backpack. So a lot of people focus on purchasing their gear and focusing on getting their base weight down and getting physically ready. But unfortunately, what takes most people off trail is the mental side of not being fully prepared of those challenges and not having that resilience to push through those setbacks, and also not being clear on your why. You do have to have a really strong motivation that keeps you going when things get tough. And so I thought it was a really beautiful time to pursue a career as a mindset coach with my background in yoga and mindfulness to help others, to help them mentally prepare, to help them build that confidence, to feel more ready and resilient to tackle those challenges on a thru hike. And I can really resonate with aspiring thru hikers because I was in that place a few years ago. I was brand new to backpacking. I was terrified. I was crippled with self-doubt and imposter syndrome. And so I've always wanted to have a career in helping others. So I think this is a perfect role to combine my passion of the outdoors and hiking with my desire to help others. I offer personalized coaching. I offer course bundles and also yoga teaching challenging for aspiring thru hikers, I would say the best way to connect with me is through Instagram. I do have a link on my bio where you should be able to sign up for my newsletter. In that newsletter, I'm constantly adding new offers and sharing what's included in my personalized coaching or different course bundles that you can sign up for, or when I'm offering yoga classes. And so the best thing is just to, connect with me on Instagram, sign up for that newsletter, reach out to me. Also, if you have any questions or doubts, I love connecting with aspiring thru hikers. I'm really close to the community of the class of 2025, connected with some amazing hikers that are preparing for their hike right now and helping them through that mental preparation journey.
We'll be sure, Chickpea, to put your Instagram handle in the episode show notes so people can follow your adventures and learn more about the opportunities that you offer, not just to thru hikers, but for anybody that's looking to do hard things that are extremely rewarding, but sometimes you just need that. I wouldn't say mental toughness, but you just need to be able to fight off the negative voice in your head that says you can't do it.
100%. I love that. That was actually my mantra on the PCT, is that I can do hard things. And we can. We all can. Sometimes we're our own worst enemies. We can really be pretty hard on ourselves and have a lot of limiting self-beliefs. And so, 100%, even if you're not preparing for a thru hike and you just want to get into day hiking or backpacking, reach out to me. I'd love to chat with you. And you can do hard things.
Now, I know we just scratched the surface on the PCT and your journey post-PCT. These last couple questions are just fun questions we like to ask all our guests. The first one is, now that you've been able to experience hundreds, thousands of miles on the trail, is there a regular summit routine, or maybe it's an end of the hike routine that you do? For some, it's maybe packing their favorite snack or drink. For others, it's a moment of zen. Is there a regular custom that you've developed when you reach your destination or when you make it back out?
I would say my ritual is town days for my thru hiking portfolio. Town days is what gets me through. I can spend the entire day daydreaming about a burger, fries, and a cold beer or coffee or pancakes. I can get pretty strict as well as when I want to get to town. I will time it around meal times. Maybe we'll get to town for breakfast, or maybe we'll get there in time for lunch. I obsess over this because I know how much joy I get from town food, and it really does help me get through those tough stretches. I remember one particular town food in Northern California when I had those NorCal Blues in Mount Shasta. I had the best burger of my life, and I will remember that burger until the day I die. It was everything that I needed in that moment. So very much my ritual is, just indulging in all the town food possible.
Now, you've been able to dial in your pack, and it's probably changed with each trip that you take. But is there a luxury item that you tend to pack that falls outside of the essentials?
Yes. That is a great question. And I just want to say that I am very much team luxury. Okay. Especially when it comes to thru hiking, when it comes to backpacking, you are already, reducing your pack to kind of the bare minimum, but you want to be comfortable. You want to enjoy your experience. So I am so pro luxury items. So 100%, if you are planning any backpacking or thru hiking trip, think about something that is going to bring you joy. And here is a word to the wise: is do not carry scented deodorant. So I carry scented fresh cucumber deodorant. I absolutely love putting it on in the morning. It is the biggest morale booster. I smell delicious. I smell clean. So that is what I have been carrying. I carried that all throughout the PCT. I carried that up until a very specific moment on the Colorado Trail, because it turns out that not only I love scented cucumber deodorant, but rodents also love scented cucumber deodorant. I woke up one morning, packing up my tent, getting everything ready to start a new day of hiking, until the moment that I went to pick up my backpack, and I noticed that my strap is completely detached from my pack. Just could lift it up. And I look around and I notice that it's been completely chewed off from the bottom. It has been, my padding on the strap has been completely gnawed out. There's no padding left. And the cherry on top is that they also took my chest strap. They took my buckle and took it home as a souvenir. So they just had an absolute buffet on my backpack. I just was kind of stunned I didn't know what to do. It felt like a home invasion is the only way I can describe it. My backpack is my home, and someone has gone in and invaded it. They have stolen from my home. I'm very grateful to Artifact, who is good with kind of DIY projects. We got our duct tape out and Leukotape from the first aid kit, and he made this kind of makeshift strap so I could continue hiking. I was 2.5 days from town, so I could not, bail out anywhere near. I needed to hike with this for 2.5 days. I was in agony. That shoulder, it was so much pain. I was stopping every 30 minutes to take little breaks in my shoulder. And luckily, when I got into town, it was a town called Salida in Colorado. There was a little bike shop. Actually, they make handmade biking materials for bike packing. So, bags and things like that. And they have a little sewing area, and they kindly sewed up my strap so I could continue hiking. But yeah, I guess my advice is I am pro luxury items, but maybe the scented stuff I would be a little bit more cautious for, because rodents also enjoy scented deodorant.
Now, Chickpea, we're at the tail end of 2024. Do you have any hiking or travel goals for 2025?
I definitely feel like my travel and hiking is what gets me through the day. I love planning new adventures. I have been traveling full time since the PCT. And so I'm always looking for kind of creative ways of traveling and accommodation options. What I've been doing recently is house sitting and pet sitting. And I use a website called Trusted House Sitters. It's a great service where, if you are an owner of a house and you have pets and cats and you're traveling, you're looking for someone to take care of your house. And somebody like myself, I'm traveling and I'm looking for, creative ways of accommodation and also to reduce my travel costs. Would love to stay at somebody's house. And so for the first few months of 2025, I'm going to be in Scotland in a beautiful home west of Glasgow, taking care of 2 outdoor cats. And so I'm really looking forward to that unique travel opportunity. I haven't spent a lot of time in Scotland, so I'm really looking forward to that. And then later on, once the hiking season begins in early May, I have 2 big hiking projects. I'm really excited to dive into Europe backpacking. That's something that I haven't done yet. So with Artifact, I will be through hiking the GR20, which is I think it's like 180 kilometers. It's a hike in Corsica, which is a little island just south of France. It's part of France, but it's supposed to be absolutely gorgeous. I'm really excited for that. And then later on in the summer, I'm going to be through hiking the Via Dinarica, which hikes through Albania, Bosnia, Croatia, Slovenia. And it's about 1,200 kilometers of hiking. So those are my 2 big hiking projects. So I'm sure there'll be fun stories that I'm happy to share with you, Ivan, and I'll keep you posted.
Oh, for sure. I'm looking forward to seeing pictures from those treks. Chickpea, it has been awesome speaking with you. This last bit of the podcast, we always like to finish off with this or that questions that are all hiking related. And I'm going to give you 2 hiking related topics, and you just choose which one you prefer out of the 2. And you can say neither, you can say both if you can't decide. The first one is, do you prefer hiking in the summer or in the fall?
Summer.
And then they get a little harder and harder with each one, but waterfalls or summits?
Summits.
And I think I know the answer to this one, but switchbacks are straight up.
Ooh. Yeah, switchbacks are lovely.
And then our most controversial one, trek poles or freehand?
Oh, trekking poles all the way.
When it comes to your footwear, trail runners or traditional hiking boots?
Trail runners, 100%.
And this one's a trail system question, but loop trail or an out and back trail?
Ooh, that's a good one. Is through hike an option? No, I'm kidding. Loop trail. Definitely loop trail.
And then I imagine you encountered this not just on the PCT, but on the Colorado Trail and some of the other trails you did. But if you had to choose a terrain, would you choose a muddy trail or a rocky trail?
Gosh, rocky trail all the way.
And then these 2 are the hardest ones, but would you rather catch the sunset on a hike or a sunrise?
That's a good one. I would say sunrise.
And then spring wildflowers or fall colors?
Ooh, spring wildflowers.
And then the last one, steep climb or long distance?
Oh, long distance.
Well, that was it, Chickpea, for the this or that questions. For folks that are interested in following your journey and seeing some of the previous posts from the PCT and Colorado Trail, where are some of the places they can follow you on social media and online?
Yeah, definitely connect with me on Instagram. It's me, Chickpea. I also have a YouTube channel. I don't have a ton of videos, but I do have a vlog series of the PCT. So if you are curious about any specific sections of the Sierra with all the snow, or Oregon Oregon, Washington, definitely feel free to check out my YouTube as well. It's me, Chickpea. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to connect and send me a DM on Instagram or send me a comment on YouTube if anything resonates with you.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to link both of those in the episode show notes so people can check them out. Chickpea, it has been an absolute pleasure to speak with you about your experiences. And I think you definitely are going to inspire and motivate a lot of people to get out on the trails, and especially through hikes. I appreciate you sharing your journey and your experiences with us.
Thank you so much, Ivan. It's been a lot of fun. Your questions are amazing. Felt very comfortable. Thank you so much for having me.
And that brings us to the end of this episode alongside Chickpea. We extend a heartfelt thanks to her for coming on the podcast. Make sure to follow her adventures on Instagram at @itsmechickpea. Also, don't forget to check out the episode show notes to learn more about her adventure and mindset coaching offerings, her YouTube channel, and more. And that's a wrap for Season 8 of the Hikes and Mics podcast. Thank you to all our amazing listeners and community members for their support throughout the season. We'll be taking the rest of December off as we prepare to premiere Season 9 in January. Hope you all have a wonderful holiday season and an amazing start to 2025. To ensure that you never miss out on those thrilling tales, remember to hit the like and subscribe button. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to join our vibrant community on Instagram at Hikes and Mics. We'll be sharing episode visuals, my own personal hiking content, and so much more. Let's stay connected and continue to inspire each other on this remarkable journey. As we bid farewell, remember to tread those happy trails, embrace the great outdoors, and keep the spirit of adventure alive. Until next time, my fellow explorers, happy hiking. This episode's music was created by Ketsa. Follow him on Instagram at Ketsa Music. This episode is brought to you by Ursa Minor Outfitters. Folks, I'm absolutely in love with my loon mug. It's handmade, it's an absolute piece of art. Whether it's at the office or at the house, people keep asking to check it out. If you're not a loon fan, they also have other beautiful mugs for wildlife fans of moose, bears, and eagles. They specialize in products highlighting the outdoors and local pride through quality design by local artists. They've even started expanding into items beyond mugs, like apparel, dog accessories, and soon candles and more. They also try to partner and highlight other small businesses, and in some cases, forego profits in lieu of charitable giving to help their community, such as the dog rescue. So check them out, ursaminooroutfitters.com, and enter promo code HikesMics10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. And for our four-legged hiking partners, they also have a portable silicone dog bowl and also a sweet over-the-collar dog bandana. Go check them out, ursaminooroutfitters.com, and don't forget to enter promo code HikesMics10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order.